really young ages, girls are getting thrown on essentially what is the HRT, basically. Most people's girlfriends are not natty, bro. Yeah.
The natty or nots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like they were taken the wrong way, or do you feel like it lessened like educational knowledge? Because I think there's a decent amount of pushback against the natty or not thing because the algorithm took it and ran with it. And now you have people just going natty or not, natty or not, natty or not.
It's like overarchingly, obviously the response is like majorly positive or else no one would keep doing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a feedback loop of positivity ultimately that leads to these continuing. It depends on what you were talking about, though, because sometimes it could be based on actual science or based on research or based on a lot of times those speculation, eye tests. You know, does a guy look saucy? Is his delts capped enough? Is his traps like disproportionately jacked? You know, that kind of stuff. It's very much subjective as to is this your preference of content versus not? And if it gets littered into what you otherwise thought was, you know, just a educational platform, or even if you had oftentimes if you get used to certain content as you've experienced yourself, your OG content does not always reflect what your current content will. And as you transition to new things and you expand your horizons and you do things that you're getting positive feedback on, sometimes the original content will be more diluted among the other stuff. And, I don't know, like as far as what I think about them in general.
I feel like the term natty or not is just a title.
Yeah.
It's just a click, something for people to click.
It's like a category in itself.
You play the game, I play the game of finding a title that audiences will click.
Mm-hmm.
It's copy. It's like the biggest part of YouTube.
Yeah.
That people just don't think about is thumbnail title. And your approach to natty or not is how can I display my understanding of this, of education?
Yeah.
Like that I know about these exogenous hormones. Well, here's a great example of it. Like you're just delivering examples of things that you know about and you want to talk about.
Yeah, I try to be as informative as I can in those kinds of videos, even though a lot of them are on the surface just like a lot of people will just see a clickbait title or a thumbnail and then just assume it's a nonsense video that's just about mind-numbing, you know, look at this picture, and now look at this picture, and now look at this picture. They're both pretty juicy, right? What about this one? And it's
I'm guilty of that. I am, and I know who you're talking about.
But some people like that shit. So,
right.
You know, like, what are you supposed to not make the content? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so I try to be as educational as I can, as frequently as I can, but, you know, there is, after you start to grow, too, you have different subsects of your subscribership that want certain videos. Like, sometimes it'll be months before I make a video on hair loss prevention, and then people are like, I don't give a about any of the other you talk about. Go make a hair loss video. You know? Because it's like at one time, it might have been a big chunk of your content, and now disproportionately it's less. So
yeah, I think this is something I learned when I started YouTube. Someone said to me, what's your expertise? Mm-hmm. Because I was just making videos, and they were like, I sent it. It was like CrossFit training vlogs.
Okay.
And someone was like, yeah, this is all cool editing and stuff, but like, why would I care about this? You have no goal that you've displayed for me or any of that. The final thing they said was, what's your expertise? And I said, I can help people snatch and clean and jerk more weight. Mm-hmm. There's a big subset of people who want to do that. And there's a big hole that I can fill with information on how to do that effectively and give people tangible steps. And I feel like that's an approach that you've had. Like there's a big gap of exogenous hormone education to the masses, and even so in doctors. And you've talked about this with Merrick Health and trying to develop something that educates people more. Do you feel like that's the process that you ultimately wanted to go down?
Yeah, like ultimately, I feel like there needs to be more education about endocrinology, how hormones work, how it impacts your biology. Because, like, even at like 15, for like really young ages, girls are getting thrown on essentially what is the HRT, basically, for years. And it's like understanding how that impacts your physiology is very worthwhile because it's literally so impactful on everything in your life, essentially. So
how strange is it that we talk about TRT in such a way, or we talk about use of exogenous hormones in such a way, but because the medical, the scale of use of birth control, nobody talks about how incredibly impactful progesterone or estrogen blockers, or would it be estrogen blockers, whatever, the main things that are given to girls at like 13, 14 years old, like we don't talk about that at all. We're just messing with their hormones immediately.
Yeah, and even if they were, even the, attempts at making male birth control, they're all derived from like DECA, for example. Like it's not literally DECA, like nandrolone decanoate, but it is nandrolone is often the parent compound that is then chemically manipulated to create like levonorgestrel, is one of the most popular progestins used in women's birth control. Very suppressive at even small dosages and orally bioavailable enough to work. And in men, the attempts at creating male birth control modalities involve similar things. They'll be looking at synthetic progestins that are derived from nandrolone or analogs of that to then create what is basically something that shuts you down so significantly that you have azoospermia when you have like no viable sperm at all. And it's basically like a version of taking gear.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't get any of the benefits.
Yeah.
You just get like shut down essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's just something that people just bought into like it was not a big deal. I never had any concern for, obviously I'm not a woman.
Yeah.
But I was just like, are you on birth control? It would be like getting with a chick. Are you on birth control or not? Like, I don't care. It doesn't, like, it's just like a pill that you take. It's magic. There's no effects. There's no side effects. Like, it's been proven. It's been used over and over again. And yet no one considers the fact that it's.
No, most people's girlfriends are not natty, bro.
Oh, God. Okay. Do you think that the truthfulness, the potential truthfulness of people in their steroid use, if someone's successful, would cause more people, mainly kids or like young adults, to want to take steroids? They might equate, here's my hero, he's open about taking steroids. And even though he does give me plenty of disclaimers, like I went through this first, I can therefore do what he does, if he or she does, by taking these drugs.
Yeah, that's a tough kind of, it's a hard, nuanced discussion because it's like, yeah, you could definitely argue that if some guy has a very, very admirable, something you aspire to be from a physique context, and he says, yeah, the reason I look like this is because of gear, but like, don't do it. If you're following that guy because he inspires you, like there's potentially some realm of encouragement, even subtly, subconsciously maybe, or unspokenly, that might be happening for you to be like, oh, to gain this level of success or notoriety or influence in social media. Like there's definitely a push in social media more recently to take gear at absurdly young ages because it seems like frankly, in the fitness industry, the personalities are typically pretty like, let's be honest, most people are, more focused on how do I get shredded, look sick on camera, rather than information, entertainment through means other than just like lifting stuff, which whatever, like you can do whatever you want. Like both are valuable mediums, but when you have so many people hyper-focused on the physique is the thing I'm going to hammer on because that's the only, like what I can wrap my head around, or I don't think I'd be successful in this other vector or whatever, a lot of people are encouraged to take that they might have not, years ago when the fitness industry wasn't so prominent and seen as like a viable way of marketing yourself. So I think it's a consequence of, social media for sure, mainly, but also, yeah, like if somebody who has a sick physique and you see to be your idol, I can imagine that might have some encouraging amount of influence on somebody who's young and impressionable for sure. And then on the other side of the spectrum, it's like, well, do you let that guy just themselves up by not educating them about, if you're going to do it, this is what you have to be mindful of so you don't end up with a heart attack at 35 or this or that, because it's like, are they going to do it anyways? And then should that person just keep it in the dark of what they're doing? It becomes this weird nuanced discussion.
I think you have set the perfect example for that. So if I was to look at your content over the years, there is equal to, maybe even more content advocating against the use of steroids.
Yeah.
And not just advocating against it, but showing what could happen.
Yeah.
You have a lot of guys, like you've talked about people balding like hyper fast. You've talked about people getting horrible cystic acne. Trend the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's fun.
you give plenty of examples of, hey, don't do it because like you should earn it first type of things. You can say, hey, if you're a jackass, like this shit's gonna fuck you up, and here you go.
Yeah.
Right? You've said that. You've also said that you have taken steroids and you've made a ton of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make the mistakes that I do if you decide to. You've also opened a clinic where you promise that the people in this clinic are going to advocate not against the use of steroids or any sort of hormones, but they're going to try and get you healthy. It's health first.
Yeah, and sometimes getting healthy does involve hormones.
Right.
But oftentimes it doesn't. So just
Yeah.
having that balanced approach whereby you are taking a broad spectrum approach from a preventative health standpoint or preventative medicine standpoint to address deficiencies, imbalances, lifestyle, I don't know, just things that you are overlooking that's low-hanging fruit before you start to just jump into the realm of replacing hormones for the rest of your life. Like there is definitely, and this is why education, I feel like, again, is so important, because you might otherwise just think, I need TRT because I had a 250 nanogram per deciliter test level on one blood test, and it's one snapshot in time from potentially a multitude of factors that contributed to this one snapshot in time looking very suboptimal, and perhaps you do not need it. And I've seen a lot of guys get on TRT haphazardly because they went to a place that otherwise just looks at a number and then makes a prescription accordingly,
Right.
or just cares about selling you medications or whatever. And having that balanced approach, I think, is critical, but also understanding it when you go in, so you know if you're getting finessed by a clinic or whatever
That wants to sell you.
Yeah, like you need to understand, like, do I even medically need this? Would I benefit from it? Is it advantageous? Is it even supportive of my health or counterproductive right now? Like, what am I even doing? Like, it sounds fucked up because you want to go to a medical provider who you can trust to inform you of things from scratch. And it's part of the reason why you pay for such like premium services. But I think there is some level of due diligence that needs to be done on your own too, to kind of have like an idea, an educated sort of broad spectrum cursory overview at least of what's going on. So because you need to be able to discern high quality information and education from what could otherwise just be like a marketing driven, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to say that, not all clinics are bad. Like, there are a lot that are doing all the right things. And this isn't even just about clinics. It's also just about not f***ing yourself up, and knowing, because a lot of people are going to self-replace TRT, like, on their own. They're going to use UGL shit.
Yeah.
They're going to use gear. They're not going to involve doctors because it's far more cost prohibitive to use pharma-grade stuff. So they will go, the UGL route, and it costs, 1/5, 1/10 the price, and get their own blood work and try and, diagnose it themselves. And I'm not suggesting to do it without a doctor, but it's just having as much education going into anything to do with manipulating your body's, like, the chemistry in your body is, like, f***ing critical in my opinion. Like, you couldn't know enough. Even if you're going to an expert, like, I've gone to experts that I thought were experts, and they ended up saying, like, nonsensical things sometimes.
Right. And they don't give you a big blood panel to do, or...
Yeah.
I think, you talk about broad spectrum, but you could look at it from a content standpoint, covering 3 bases, let's say it is. One is talking openly about steroid use, then warning people of the problems, maybe giving examples.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be like education. And you need to do all of those. If you are, and I think that's the thing, is like, we talk about The Rock, Chris Hemsworth, people that have been accused in the past of being on steroids. It's like, are they able to provide that to everyone in a good way? And if they can't, is it a net good for them to say that they're taking steroids? And that's the thing. That's the ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it gets more conflated when they sell something that's based on their physique and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's weird. Like, I don't know the answer either. Sometimes it's convoluted.
That's the philosophical issue. It's like, what's the harm in being open about steroid use? Well, if you're not prepared to give every bit of information and package it the right way, where you can tell people all these different things to cover, you could do more harm potentially. And there's a decent argument to be made. I think it's a scary thing to think about. It's not scary. It's just it puts you in a little bit of a quagmire, a little bit of a quandary. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that, press here for the full-length episode.